All right, today we're going to dig into a business story that, honestly, at first glance, just doesn't quite make sense. It's a really fascinating puzzle, full of strategy, demographics, and some numbers that are pretty eye-popping. And yeah, this is the big question right here. How is it even possible for a company's profits to just explode, growing at a rate 16 times faster than its sales? I mean, that seems to fly in the face of business logic, but that is exactly what happened here. Okay, so here's the first piece of the puzzle. For the second quarter of 2025, the online education company, Sunlands, they reported a 9.5% bump in revenue. Now, that's pretty good. It's healthy, solid growth, but it's not going to knock your socks off, you know? But then you see this number. In the very same quarter, their net income, their actual profit, shot up by 154%. So let's dive into this. How in the world did they pull that off? To figure this out, we first just have to look at the raw numbers from that really stunning second quarter of 2025. The numbers really tell the tale here. Revenue came in at 539 million RMB. That's that solid 9.5% increase. But look at the net income. It leaped to over 126 million RMB. And what that did was push their net margin, which is basically how much profit they squeeze out of every sale, to a super impressive 23.5%. So they weren't just selling more, they were making way more money on everything they sold. And here's the kicker. This was not some lucky break or a flash in the pan. This report actually marked their 17th profitable quarter in a row. So this company has a long proven history of being disciplined and executing well. So what changed? What caused this massive surge now? Well, the answer is in this massive strategic pivot, a total transformation that took years to pull off. They moved the company's entire focus away from formal degrees and shifted it towards lifelong interests. And this wasn't some snap decision they made last year. Sunlands saw this big shift in China's adult education market coming way back in 2001. So they started this slow, very deliberate transition away from just helping people get degrees. And by 2025, that transition had completely remade their entire business. This chart just lays it out so perfectly. They went from those lower margin degree programs to higher margin courses based on people's interests, things like hobbies, personal growth, practical skills. This new model, it just let them be way more agile and give adult learners what they were actually looking for. And here's the payoff. The proof is in the pudding, right? By the second quarter of 2025, a whopping 78% of their revenue was coming from these new interest-based courses. And those old degree programs? They're now just about 1% of the business. I mean, that is a complete and total transformation. Okay, so they changed what they were selling. But the other absolutely critical piece of this puzzle is who they started selling to. Sunlands honed in on a massive, booming, and, honestly, an often overlooked demographic. They focused on what's called the silver economy. And it's pretty simple. It just means all the economic activity that's built around the needs and wants of people who are 50 years old and up. And let me tell you, it's a huge and fast-growing market. And listen, Sunlands didn't just test the waters here. They dove in head first. They managed to build this huge community, an ecosystem with tens of millions of senior users. They really got that this group wasn't just looking for education. They were also craving connection and engagement. And the results of this focus? They're just incredible. I mean, get a load of these numbers. From that massive community, they have over 1 million people paying full price. Their course completion rate is hovering around 80%, and their repurchase rate is over 60%. That is a ridiculously loyal and engaged customer base. Okay, so you've got the right product and you've got the right audience, but how do they connect those two things so well? Because it's one thing to say you're targeting a group, but it's another thing entirely to actually serve them well at scale. Sunland's secret sauce here is this blend of technology and a really deep understanding of what community means. The CEO, Mr. Tong Belu, he really nailed it when he said their platform is more than just a place to learn. It's become a social hub. By helping fight loneliness and helping people build new friendships, the learning itself creates this multiplier effect that builds a community and keeps people coming back for more. And the engine powering all of this is a really sophisticated AI. They use their own software platform that's been trained on billions of data points to deliver personalized courses in real time. They even built a voice-activated AI assistant to make the whole thing super accessible and easy for older learners to use. So, with a report this good and a strategy this successful, you'd think the stock market would be going wild, right? Well, this is where the story gets a little bit weird. At first, yeah, the reaction was great. The stock jumped almost 8% on the day they announced earnings. But then, look at the very next day. It gave back about half of those gains, dropping over 4%. So what happened? The answer is in something called low float dynamics. It's kind of a fancy term, but it basically just means a company has a pretty small number of shares available for the public to trade. And when there are fewer shares trading back and forth, even a small number of buy or sell orders can make the price swing like crazy. So this wasn't the market saying the report was bad. Not at all. It was just a classic case of a company with fantastic performance, strong fundamentals, bumping up against the weird mechanics of the market. Because the stock is thinly traded and not a lot of analysts cover it, the price can just be really, really volatile. Now, to really understand the Sunlands story, we need to zoom out for a second and look at the absolutely massive trend that they are riding. Sunlands is playing in a market that is just colossal. I mean, forecasts are projecting China's adult education market to be worth over 1 trillion RMB by 2027, and the online part of that is growing at over 17% a year. They've put themselves in the perfect spot in a huge growing industry. And all of this leaves us with a final, really interesting question to think about. The success of Sunlands seems to point to a major global shift. As populations all over the world get older, is it possible the very purpose of education is changing? Maybe it's moving away from just being about preparing for a job and moving towards fueling our personal passions and building human connection for our entire lives?